Well, Robert, I am so excited to have you in this interview series and to talk about this topic of codependency and childhood wounds. And I feel like this is still kind of like a new science that's being brought to the surface, but also so many people out there are living these wounds, right? And they don't even know that it's going on around them. And it's this these sort of this phenomenon that's happening within our body. And for us, it's like, especially because a large part of this audience are, people pleasers and struggle to, get validation and approval from themselves. And so they seek it in others. And of course that leads up to a very anxious, a very anxious life. And I'm so excited to have you give your inputs about these topics. So Robert, thank you so much for being here. And can you tell the audience a little bit more about yourself, what you do, and what motivates you to put out the work that you do?
Sure. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad to be with you today to talk about this topic. So I'm a psychotherapist, I'm an inner child expert, and I'm an author. So I have two books, Healing Your Lost Inner Child and Healing Your Wounded Relationship. And inner child work is really near and dear to me because of my own work, my own healing work that began in my 20s, really working through my inner child wounding, which I had no idea about when I first started out. And luckily I had a therapist who knew and understood this work and took me through the process. And since then, of course, I've studied and done this work in workshops and in retreats and within myself, and of course with most of the people who see me. So I know the efficacy of this work because you're going deeper to really the emotional wounding that are really the underpinnings for all of these behaviors and ways that we think about ourselves. So it really is so pervasive within us, but we don't realize it. We just think, well, I am who I am. Mm-hmm. So we don't realize that these ideas of ourselves started somewhere, and that they can be healed.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, for those of you watching, if you find yourself frustrated in your relationships and maybe you're not getting your needs met, and maybe you're one of those people who are hiding behind like a fake smile, right? Like maybe you feel like you need to be nice to everybody. I know for a long time I thought this was normal. Like this is what everybody does. So if I go against the grain, then I'm just going to be weird, or there's this possibility my relationship will blow up and I'm supposed to be this way. And I know what I ended up learning that is this may be the norm, right? This may be like the majority of people, but it doesn't make it right, and it doesn't make it healthy or supportive. So Robert, you talk about this thing called recycling, like recycling our wounds from the past and living with these recycled wounds. How do we know if we're living with these wounds? And can you talk a bit more about like what maybe some of these specific wounds?
Sure. Well, most people don't realize that they're repeating these patterns and themes, and that really is the recycling. So that's where, we learn these ideas about ourselves, and either those ideas were put on us directly or we pick them up indirectly. And so we begin to think, well, this is who I am, and I'm not very good, and I'm inferior, and I'm less than. And so we're telling ourselves all of these false ideas of ourselves. And like you were talking about, Lydia, we began to then give power to other people. And so we say to others, okay, you're better than I am, you're greater than me. And so we put ourselves down and we put them up. And then we begin, like you said, the people pleasing, where we're like, what can I do for you? What do you need from me? So we put ourselves really far down on the list, and therefore we don't have good boundaries, and we give in a lot, and we just give people whatever they want, and we also are changing for them. So we're reading people all the time, and we're like, okay, who do you need me to be? And when we do that consistently, that's when we really lose ourselves. And that's when people will come to see me and they're like, I don't know who I am anymore. And it's because they've given their power away so much.
Yeah. What are some of the ways like we give our power away? Because I feel like this I feel like if I heard this phrase like 10 years ago, it would have sounded so abstract to me, like giving my power away. What does that look like? And I know some easy things that popped up for me on my journey was like, I noticed like, if I was walking around in a parking lot and a car was coming, I would hurry, like I would speed up to get out of their way, or I would apologize for being on the elevator when the doors opened. When I'm supposed to really go out first, right? Like it's the norm to let that person out and then let others in. And I was just apologizing for things that
Yeah.
weren't even mine.
Well, I know what you mean, and I think as codependents, I call myself a codependent in recovery. So as codependents, we know that routine really well because we were trained from such a young age to say, okay, everybody else has more power than I do, meaning that they have a greater place in this world than I do. And so it's this training that we received and this idea that we had in our heads from a young age that said, okay, I'll get out of your way, let me get that for you, what can I do for you? So those are all examples of giving our power away. And of course, when we give our power away, that demonstration is our lack of boundary setting.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say that boundary setting really is the key to unlocking our freedom. It's the key to moving past this recycled pain, past these wounded patterns, into a place where we have agency and we have a sense of freedom and a sense of just, oh, I can be myself.
Yeah. I think a lot of viewers, I think what may be coming up for a lot of people, and I know what comes up for a lot of my codependent clients is,
Right.
well, like I feel like I'm not allowed to say no, or I'm not allowed to, smile or be happy. And when I am, it's like it's taken away from me, or somebody makes me wrong for it. You know, what could you tell these people who it's like, okay, all this sounds nice, but I'm not allowed to.
Well, I know what you mean. And I think a lot of people do say that to themselves, like, I'm not allowed to, or I can't, or I shouldn't. And all of that is this false narrative that was developed probably decades ago that they still are carrying forward.
Mhm.
So they're saying, well, my parents never listened to me, or my friends always put me down, or I don't understand why I try to be a nice person, but no one's nice to me. So all of these are codependent behaviors and sort of the relationship that we establish within ourselves and with other people. Again, it's where we're putting them, at a higher place, and we're saying, "I'm not worth that much. So what do you need?" It's that expression, putting ourselves on fire to keep everybody else warm.
Yeah.
That's sort of this codependent dance that we're all in.
Yeah.
But having come out the other side of it, I know that yes, it is hard work to move through that pain and to really look at these parts of ourselves. And that's what I take people through that in my book, just step by step of showing how to recognize these patterns, these codependent, I call them skills or tools. Because if you think about it, we learned to navigate using these codependent skills in our childhood families. And so we said, oh, okay, so mom or dad's like really loud and big and raging. So I need to become really small. I
Mm.
need to shut down. I need to be invisible. So that's one example of a codependent tool that helped us in childhood. But imagine how that person would then bring that codependent tool of shutting down into their adult life.
Yeah.
And then whenever their partner would try to bring up a topic that, let's talk about this, we need to get through this, they just shut down. They go into conflict avoidance. They isolate. And those are all the tools they learned as a child.
I love it. Wow. Even as you were talking, things were popping up for me.
Yeah.
I remember times where like It's like, oh, mom's coming down the driveway. Hurry, flip open the homework books and turn off the TV to make sure. Let's pretend we're really, because there's this expectation, there's this fear already there that, mom or dad's going to be angry and I'm just going to make it worse, or I'm going to be the cause of their anger. And it's just like this blaming. Can you talk a little bit more about like, why do we tend to be stuck in this, like, it's all because of me, it's I'm the problem here, and if only I was better or not flawed or perfect, and everything would go my way.
Well, I love that question, because what you just described was me as a child. So I had very loving parents, but like most parents, they got into arguments about adult issues. But as a child, I didn't understand that. And I took it very personally. Most children are very egocentric. We think the world revolves around us. And so I thought, okay, they're arguing because of me. So I'm like, okay, in my little boy head, I'm like, okay, I'll become perfect and do everything they ask, and then they won't argue, and then we'll be okay. And so that was really some of my first recollections of my codependency showing up, and how it was showing up. And of course, I became perfect. And in fact, later, someone was asking my mom, like, well, how was it raising, your kids? And my mom said, oh, well, Bobby never gave us any problems. And I was like, yes, job well done. Because that was my whole objective. Like, okay, how can I be the good boy? How can I be the peacemaker? How can I try to smooth everything over, caretaker, fixer, rescuer? So, I really worked so hard to do that because I wanted my family to be okay. I was trying to smooth out the dysfunction.
Yeah.
But of course, as I said earlier, I brought all of that into my adult life. It just didn't stop when I was 18 and went to college.
Yeah. And for those of you viewers, I can already hear some people saying, gosh, I'm exhausted. And like, I feel like I have to do everything, in my relationship. And are you starting to put the pieces together now? Like, when you put on all the responsibility on yourself and make yourself wrong, it kind of excuses everybody else and takes the responsibility from everyone else. And really, I mean, I know what I've learned is that this is what true intimacy is all about. It's not what we see in the movies and these fairy tales of these perfect romantic relationships, right? It's like, it's about sharing that part of you that maybe is stressed out, that is tired, that is exhausted. That's true intimacy, really showing up as everything that you are experiencing and not making yourself wrong for.
Well, I love how you just said that. And yes, that is true intimacy. But to reach that with our partners, we have to become intimate and vulnerable to ourselves.
Yeah.
So we have to do our internal work first to be able to say, okay, this is who I am. And now I know, and I can practice strong boundary setting. And that's going to help us find a partner that's healthy as well. So what often happens is people who don't do this internal work, which is most people, they will set out and they'll say, I want to be with someone, and they'll start dating someone. And a lot of times they will find someone who has wounding that complements their wounding. And I call this synergistic wounded attraction. And so what that is let's say someone who likes to be the hero will find someone else who like really needs to be rescued. And I give an example in my wounded relationship book. I talk about the wounded hero and the rescued victim, and how they find each other, they get together, and it works for them, but it's in a dysfunctional way. And it's not until one or both begin to heal themselves and kind of climb out of that they're able to say, hey, this doesn't work for me anymore. I want something healthier. And like to like what you were saying before, that intimacy, that emotional surrender, that emotional vulnerability, all of that can come about. It's just waiting for you. But it's about setting strong boundaries within yourselves and with other people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think, like you said, Robert, this step is just overlooked.
Right.
And we go out into the dating world or into marriage, or whatever the partnership looks like, and we're like, okay, let me learn a different technique, or let me insert line here, and we're just learning strategies and techniques, and there's actually no actual growth or like acceptance of your own self actually happening. I call this like growing horizontally versus growing vertically. It's like maybe
I
you're
like that.
yeah, like maybe for those viewers watching, maybe you're learning more about people and you're understanding, you're getting more clarity around what's going on, but that doesn't mean that you are growing, that you are starting to accept and uncover your own dysfunction and accepting them, and learning to you know I don't know what the best word here is, whether be friends with that part of you, or love that part of you, or just accept that part of you. But that has to come first, is what I mean.
You're right. It really has to come first. And it's loving, trusting, and respecting ourselves first. And then we can extend that to others. Because what often happens is, a wounded heart cannot um, see dysfunction. In other words, so a wounded heart would set out and say, "Oh, I want to date or get together with someone, have a relationship with them," and they'll unconsciously choose another hurt person because they haven't done their deep inner work. And it's that wounded part that's really choosing and saying, "Hey, I have low self-esteem. Will you be an abuser to me? Will you talk down to me?" Uh, of course, they're not consciously setting out for that, but that's what happens. That's that wounded part of us attracts that opposite to kind of come in and like, "Oh, I'm trying to learn this lesson. Will you be mean to me? Because that's how I think of myself."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
And these are the people who are showing up right in your office, and they're like, I'm tired, I'm unhappy, like I don't like who I see in the mirror. But when you hear it from this perspective, it all makes sense, right? Like
Yes.
what's familiar and what may feel comfortable to a lot of people is actually pretty uncomfortable.
Well, it is uncomfortable, when you're living it, and people will say, I'm tired of this. I'm just not happy. Which was me in my 20s. Like I said, I'm really trying so hard to have these healthy, what I thought were healthy relationships, but I kept on attracting these very narcissistic people into my life that didn't treat me very well. And I was, using my tools from childhood, I was like caretaking, what can I do for you? Making their lives all better. And I didn't realize how lopsided that was because those relationships were not reciprocal at all.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have the boundary setting to really understand how kind of crazy that was. I just thought I'm being me and this is what I know to do. But it wasn't until I started to step back and have that bigger perspective that I saw, okay, this is my part in this. And so when I started setting boundaries and I was no longer kind of doing everything for them and kind of making their lives all great, most of those relationships went away
Yeah.
because I wasn't doing for them anymore. And of course I wasn't getting anything from them, but I didn't know that. But but that's how I really kind of cleaned up my relationship life.
Yeah. It sounds like the key nugget here is this thing called boundaries. And I
Yeah.
know I didn't even know this word existed until probably like 27 or 28 when I actually started working with a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
And can you, I know we don't have a whole lot of time. Can you briefly touch on like what exactly are boundaries for people who are in this place and they don't feel like they're allowed to have boundaries? Can you talk about a little bit about like what they are and why they're so vital? If you want that healthy partnership, this has to happen, right?
Well, that's true. Quite simply, boundaries are our gut reaction to a situation. So a boundary would be if someone said, Lydia, do you want to go to skydiving tomorrow? And maybe that's something that, no, you're like, no.
On the ground. That is a boundary.
Right, exactly. So right away, you got that. Right away, you said no. So right away, that's your boundary system internally saying no. But if I was still in my codependency and someone said, do you want to go skydiving tomorrow? I'd be like, oh, well, I don't want to disappoint you. And I want you to still like me. So, okay, I'll go. But the whole time I'm like freaked out that I really don't want to go skydiving.
Yeah.
But paying attention to the gut reaction, that is the first step of boundary setting, because you know how you feel about something right away. And what I reference are two things: internal boundaries and external boundaries. So an internal boundary is a promise or commitment we make to ourselves. Mine is, I'm not going to eat pizza every day, although I'd love to eat pizza every day. So that would be an internal boundary that I'm making. An external boundary is what we're stating to someone else. So we're stating, in our earlier example, we're stating, well, I love you, but I'm not going to go skydiving with you today.
Love it.
So that's our statement. So we have an internal boundary, promise and commitment to ourselves. External boundaries are what we say to others. And so many people will say, well, I don't know how to say a no to someone else, which is the hardest thing for a codependent to do. And that really is the big step. And for your viewers, if they want more information, I'm going to have a handout that they can write to me, and I'll send them out a little bit more of a description of this, of how they can do this, how they can start out with a small no and begin to sort of say those. And what you will find is those small no's really help to exercise that boundary muscle. And we get used to saying, no, I don't want to do that, but thank you. And we see that our friends still like us.
Yeah.
And they haven't gone away. and for me today, it's more important that people today respect me than like me. So even though they might not like what I'm saying, if I just say no to them or whatever, it's like I've spoken my truth. And that's how I'm continually healing myself. And I want to say just one more thing, and that is our inner child keeps showing up when we do not set good boundaries. Because if you think about it, that inner child wounding is all about protection. It's all about how to keep us safe. And until as adults, we start to set boundaries, that inner child just rushes in and says, well, wait a minute, this is chaotic. I need to get this under control. But once the adult says, no, I got it, we're going to be okay, and these are my functional boundaries I'm going to use today, that's when the inner child begins to heal. Through my work is kind of understanding that process and being able to claim this authentic freedom that's just waiting for them.
Yeah. You said so much in just those last those last 2 minutes. And one thing that really stuck out is like, often, people who are being abused or, even if it's not malicious, we feel like, oh my gosh, if I start saying no, or even if I just start saying maybe, instead of course, yes, all the time, whatever you need, like we feel like everything's going to blow up in our face and we'll lose the connection. And I know from my own personal experience that hasn't really been the case. Like people don't just disappear. I mean, and I'm also not going to lie here. Sometimes that will happen. And a lot of times the relationship does change because now you are becoming who you always really were. Right.
That's true. That's true. And you'll learn very quickly people who respect you for you, or who just want you to be a version that sort of caters to them.
Yeah.
So you'll learn that very quickly. I do think that your readers or your viewers need to know though, that if they're in a highly abusive or toxic relationship, setting boundaries can be really sometimes volatile in those relationships. So if you're in a highly manipulative, domestic violence sort of a relationship, I really encourage those viewers to get outside help before they begin to set boundaries, because sometimes that can escalate the dysfunction in the relationship. So it's just a point I like to make for safety's sake. But in general, setting boundaries has totally changed my life. And I've seen how it has changed other people's lives, because it gets us out of these cycles that we learned so long ago, and this false narrative that I'm not able to set boundaries, that I'm not able to speak my truth, which is that's something that's absolutely not true.
Mhm. Yeah. And also, like, you're allowed to protect yourself. Like,
Yes,
you have to. I mean,
yes,
nobody else is going to be able to do that for you, especially as an adult. You know, we have our caretakers when we're children, but as an adult, like, if you don't, then who will? Like, really let this sink in for those of you watching. You know, like, at what point is it time to stop? You know, how many more days have to go by? How many more hours have to go by where you finally have had enough? And I love how you brought up respect, because, you know, just a really quick way to kind of put this in perspective, what I do as a hypnotist with my clients is I say, okay, shut your eyes and just be a fly on the wall and look at yourself acting this way. Look at yourself, you know, begging for attention or pleading or getting angry and raising your voice and screaming. And often it's like this humiliation. I know for me, I was humiliated when I learned how I was giving my power away. And that was more painful than, oh, you know, saying no, thank you.
I know. Well, you're right. This work is hard in that, like, you're guiding your clients through that process and sort of sitting with that pain of that recognition of, gosh, look how much I'm giving my power away, and why am I doing that? And so it's not about getting kind of lost in that toxic shame. It's about holding that, honoring that, loving that, and knowing that all of those things develop for a reason. And so thank that part, because that inner child really helped you. And now it's about saying, I love you, but we don't have to do this anymore. We don't have to put others first and us second, me second.
Mhm.
So that's just a beautiful way of just honoring and respecting yourself.
Mhm. And as we wrap up here with Robert, which is, this has been such an amazing, just so informative, and just, I mean, just these 20 minutes, like, listen to this again. Like, if this is new to you. You, Robert, just really quick, you know, what might you tell someone who struggles with actually, you know, being able to like their younger self? I know I used to look at photos of myself as like a teenager and I was like, ew, I don't, like, yuck. And over time I started to see the beauty in this younger child. But for those of, you know, for those viewers who are like, oh, I don't like her or I don't like him, who I see in the mirror, what's
You know,
important about really just, you know, starting to look for those little things, right?
that's beautiful. I'm glad that you brought that up, Lydia. If I really encourage people to hold that younger self inside, sort of connect to that part and that inner child, and really give so much love to that part, because it's a protector. It's been with you your whole life. It's really that inner child has worked so hard using all of these tools that were developed a long time ago. So it's honoring that, and see if you can pull out, like you said, pull out a picture, or just remember your childhood experience. I had a woman that I talk about in the book, where she agreed that I could share this story, but uh, she said, "Oh, I really," talking about her inner child. She said, "I really hate her." I'm
Mhm.
like, "Okay," and she said, "I want her to go away." And I'm like, "Okay." So so we talked about that a little bit more, and it was because she just hated looking at that part of her life because it was so hard, and she wanted to see herself today as an adult woman. and not all the struggles she went through. But through our work, she was able to really give that part so much love. And if people are really struggling, say, okay, so if an 8-year-old, 6 or 8-year-old was standing in front of you just crying, would you ignore that child, or would you give them a hug? And it's like, you'd give them a hug. You would extend empathy to them. And that's what we're talking about. It's extending empathy to ourselves, just like we would to a child.
I love it. And for the people, recovering people pleasers out there, like, just realize this now, you already have these skills. Like, if you're a people pleaser, you're already really in tune with other people. You have like a superpower, and you can really make this extraordinary, to have the most extraordinary relationships and connections. And if you struggle with giving that to your inner child, like Robert was saying, like, just like you said, if you saw a child crying, you're not going to stand there. You're naturally, it's just going to be intuitive to go over there and just like, hey, what's wrong? And maybe put your hand on their shoulder or on their head or something, just in a very loving way. Like, if this is already inside of you, and it just becomes a decision. Like, are you going to keep hurting her? Are you going to keep, or him, the younger you, or are you going to allow yourself to extend, like you said, those things that you would do for someone else? Because we, all us people pleasers, know we'll go to the end of the earth for someone else.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it's just, through meditation or through your work, through hypnotism, they can go into that deeper place and just hold that part, that part of you, and just extend love and forgiveness and kindness, and just surrender into that space. People will say, oh, I don't, they'll say, I don't want to look at that. It's too hard to look at. I'm like, well, nothing that you're going to find is going to shock you. It's your life, right? So you know the whole story, but they're saying they don't want to sit with the pain, but the pain's not going to kill you. It's going to be hard to sit with, but just give yourself love, kindness, compassion, and just sink into that vulnerability and hold it for a little bit, and know that there's a pathway out of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the whole premise of this whole summit and this interview is like, look, this is possible. Like, clearly, we've been able to climb out of this. And so if you're those viewers who are watching, maybe you feel like you're in this pit of despair and you're like, how do I even get started on this? If you need help with this, go check out Robert's resources. I know, can you tell us more about where they can find more about you, your website? And I know you have a free gift for this audience about boundary setting as well.
That's right. That's right. So people can go and look at my work at my website, The Art of Practical Wisdom. So The Art of Practical Wisdom, it's all spelled out, as well as my channel, The Art of Practical Wisdom, on YouTube as well. And if they write to me through my website, I'll be happy to send out a information. That's right. Information about boundary setting, much of which I've talked about today, but with some more information as far as wrapping around that, because I believe boundary setting, as you've heard from me this session, is so important for recovering codependents to move through this, so we can go on to claim our authentic selves. So theartofpracticalwisdom.com or The Art of Practical Wisdom on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing, Robert. Click the link below to go get these resources, to go check out this website. Like, don't miss this. This is free, FREE. Like, there's no reason, if you're listening and this is resonating with you on some level, maybe even if part of you is like, I don't know, can this really happen? What if it can, right? Just go poke around, go check it out, do the work. And,
just to clarify, I know I'm interrupting, but just to clarify, send me an email. So go to my website and then go to contact us and send me an email. That's how you'll get the information. I'll be able to send it out that way.
Perfect. So everybody go to his website, send him an email, and you get these tools for free. These are free tools to get you started. And if you need any further guidance, contact Robert. Like, he's just a wealth of information. Check out his YouTube channel. I'm certainly excited to explore more and just just spread the word about this so that everybody can really start to be on this path if they want to.
Well, healing is available and waiting for every one of us.
Yeah.
It's just, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So when we're ready for this information, I know I was fortunate enough to find good people to help me and resources. And you're such a wonderful person, Lydia, creating this summit where people have access to all of these thought leaders and way showers. All of this information is really going to help so many people. So thank you for your work.
Thank you so much, Robert. I'm so excited to share this with more people. And thank you for being a part of this series. And thank you to all the viewers watching. Go to his website, check it out, theartofpracticalwisdom.com. And we'll just wrap up here. And I want to say thank you to you all.
Thank you, Lydia.
Thank you, Robert.